This is James Mathers for the Digital Cinema Society at the 2024 DCS Cinema Lens Day. This is our final presentation of the day, and we're going to talk about growing sensor sizes. This is a subject that's very dear to my heart as an equipment owner who has a lot of cameras like the ones that we're using today that are Super 35, and then the manufacturers keep growing the sensors, and my lenses can't work with the new cameras. So yes. Tell me how we're going to fix that, Tim.
We want to talk a little bit whether or not it's a problem yet, and if it is,
it's only a problem for me.
We're going to see.
So we have Tim Smith from Angénieux is going to moderate. Miles Shozuya from Fujifilm, and from DZOFILM, Jeremy, Lynn. Thank you, guys.
You got it. Thank you for staying here all day just for this. We really appreciate you waiting for the best one of the day. All right, so just by way of introduction, yes, I am with Angénieux, so I'll try to stay as neutral as I can as a lens manufacturer, but I also did spend 30 years over at Canon on the camera side, so sensors and I are not strangers. From a lens standpoint, what are we doing in terms of building new lenses for different sensor sizes? And before we even get to that, why are we doing it? If I put a full frame sensor on a Super 35, a full frame lens on a Super 35 millimeter sensor, and it's a 50 millimeter full frame, it's still a 50 millimeter full sensor. I'm a lens. What does it bring to the party just to get a bigger sensor? Why do you think the industry wants us to make lenses for these?
Yeah, so for our side from Fujifilm, what we chose to do is make dedicated lenses. So for full frame cameras, sensor cameras, we have our Premista lenses. For Super 35, we have our Cabrios and our Premiers and our MK series lenses. The exception to that rule would be our new Duvo series, which is a family of 3 lenses. We have our big box lens, 25 to 1000. We have a 24 to 300 and a 14 to 100. So what we chose to do, it's a Super 35 lens. So the image circle size of this lens is 28.5, but it has a built-in 1.5 expander. So once you flip an expander in, if you're shooting in Super 35, if you have it on a Super 35 sensor camera, you flip the 1.5 in, it acts as 1.5 times extend. So you're blowing up the center of the image. Now, if you have this lens on a full frame censored camera and you flip in the 1.5, it expands the coverage, so it'll cover a full frame sensor. Difference between an extender and an expander, such as the one in this lens, is that with an extender, all you're concentrating on is the center of the image. So when you flip that extender in, all you're doing is you're blowing up the very center. But with expander, what you want to do is when you have a full frame camera sensor, you need to expand the image of the lens to cover whole image, whole sensor.
It's changing your field of view. So if I put my extender in, it'll remove all the vignetting I would get from mismatching the two.
Right, correct.
But I'm still 50, a 60, a 70. I'm just slicing it. Right. If I pushed it in post, it would be exactly the same thing.
Yes.
The picture doesn't change. So why are we killing ourselves to do this? You as a producer, how do you address it if they're saying, I'm going to shoot 65 mil? Now, I know that there are people that if Deacon's wants 65, he's getting 65, and it's going to be beautiful. But everything he's ever done that wasn't 65 is also beautiful. But it will limit the number of lenses he can actually use because there's not that many lenses by comparison in 65. So I'm just trying to get to the point creatively. Why are we chasing this? What are we going to win at the end of this sensor race?
That is a very good question, because I think it comes down to trying to get people back into the seats, right? if you give somebody something new, when 3D started to hit the screens, right? Everybody was like, oh, wow, that's great. 3D, let's go see it. And then it died off again. And then, there's these ebbs and flows of trying to get people out of their house into the theaters. I'm not saying it's just that, but as a producer, I feel a lot of it is give something. You got to give something different. Give them a reason to get out of the house. Gosh, but from a producer's standpoint, it hurts because that's more money. That's more money. It takes more time. Is like.
But if the director and the cinematographer have properly spoken to you, you'll understand what they're trying to achieve creatively, and then you'll say no or yes, depending on whether it's worth it or not. I'm still looking at films as a audience member and wondering if this film is better because they did this. There is no 3D film that I have ever seen no 2D film that I've ever seen that I thought, oh, if they'd only done that in 3D.
Right.
Except maybe one Jim Cameron film that I thought would have been, with the wiggle worm, what was that? The Deep. I thought maybe I'd like to see that in 3D. But for the most part, I don't know what that brings to it as an audience member, whether it made a better piece of art. I do think, because I'm leading these questions, that a 65 millimeter sensor with the right lenses could create a different emotional connection to the story. But I still don't know what that connection, how to define that. Are you following me or no? Because right now I just keep talking to them. I forget you're here. If you're a producer, if you're a cinematographer, why would you want to use a 65 millimeter sensor? What does that give you that full frame doesn't give you in terms of what's going to end up on the screen or what the story is going to be? I understand anamorphic. If I'm doing Lawrence of Arabia or something like that, I can't do that on a 3rd-inch sensor and get that grandeur.
Right.
65, it gives me a lot more negative. See, as a manufacturer, we have to build lenses for these sensors.
Right.
And if 2 people here want it, we're not going to do that.
Agreed.
Or shouldn't do that. We are looking to make more lenses and give people more reasons to buy things, but will the demand be there? Anamorphic, 3D, it does this.
Right.
And all of a sudden, by the time you build it, nobody wants to do that anymore.
Exactly.
And it's out again. Or Chivo shoots something that looks beautiful and everybody for the next 2 years wants to make a movie that looks like that. So I, as a manufacturer, am sort of a little bit resisting. Now, all right, so Angénieux, just so I'm going to jump in, most of our lenses have interchangeable relays. So the rear element can be removed and a new element can go in, which will then make it natively what that sensor size is. So we don't do the expander thing. All of these are different ways to do the same thing, but we designed it so we can change the backs and say, yes, this is full frame, but it is also Super 35 without expanders, without doing those things. It's expensive to do it that way. Crazy expensive to do it that way. And you can't retrofit them or anything. So it's for a very high-end expensive lens, but 65 would be different. We can't make that back. It would just be too big. So are you guys at DZO? I mean, you guys are really out of the box, right? Thinking out of the conventional box with your glass these days. So
right. I mean, yeah, we're trying to. It's a fairly new company on the lens side, and we only have like 1 or 2 lines that are Super 35. Right. The rest are VistaVision. They're full frame. They cover VistaVision. But yeah, they really didn't stay at the Super 35 space for long, because at the time that they were designing and making this stuff, it was, they were already into the full frame. They were already into the next, latest and greatest generation of sensors, right? So yeah, they didn't focus on it too much, except their anamorphics are Super 35. So that's kind of where they had to,
sort of makes sense in terms of how you have to deal with that information.
Right.
You do cinema lenses. You also do a lot of high-end lenses for sports and live and all that kind of stuff. Any push in the sports space for 65? Is there any desire? I mean,
we're not seeing that in sports, no.
I don't know how you pull focus to that.
Right. Even at this point, shooting in 4K with PL mount cinema lenses in cameras, right? That's a stretch for them.
Yeah.
So in that respect, we're building lenses like our dual lenses to cover that that market, but going any larger than that wouldn't make sense in smartphone.
I think that maybe it isn't about lenses, Super 35. Maybe it's about post. Maybe it's about all that ability to push in and move. So when you've got that much real estate, I can shift later. I can move up and down. I can slice that image up almost any way I want when I've got that much in there. I can shoot coverage like crazy with it that big. I just don't know where the lens people fall into this. As shooters, as cinema, how many people here are either operators or cinematographers? Most of you. Would you consider shooting wide and pulling and cutting your close-up from the same shot? Or would you insist on shooting a close-up and a wide? Okay, so the question was, would he do it? And he was pretty insistent on, hell no. And I'm sort of with you, but if you go back to the days of sensor resolution, it was like, oh, it's 2K, now it's 4K, and it might even be 6K. There was a cinematographer I worked with that was sure that as soon as we had enough resolution, he could shoot everything and punch in. And on the test that I was at, the actors pushed back violently to that. They said, you can't shoot me from my feet to my head and tell me this is my close-up. I don't know where my energy goes. I don't know where to act to. I don't know what to do with my hands. And I think that's very true. I mean, technically, the resolution would have been fine. The shot would have looked similar, but the performance would be different. But I still think 65 maybe plays into the idea similar to that we now have enough coverage to post to sort of frame necessarily or tell the story a little bit differently. So I could see that, but I definitely agree that it's a horrible idea to do that for the performance. Sure, for sports, fine. They do it all the time. Punch in, see if his foot was inbounds or not inbounds. That's fine. But emotionally, yeah. So you save the close-up for traditional shooting. And I'm all for using a zoom for that. Go ahead, change the focal lengths. That's fine. But sensor change is different. I mean, agreed?
Yeah, totally. I was just gonna say to that effect. To me, I don't know. The whole shooting your master, using that to punch in, is lazy. To me, it's lazy. It saves time, I guess, if you gotta shoot 20 pages in a day. But I mean,
as a producer, that's a bold statement.
It is, but it still seems lazy because I know, like you said, you're not gonna get that performance, and in the end, that's what people see. They see the actor. They don't see the camera. They don't know anything else. They see that person on screen. And if that person is lazy or, lackluster or whatever, they notice easily.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not an actor. I've seen enough of it. And when they work up with some tears, and I don't know how they do that, you can almost, if you really pay attention, you can kind of see it swell up out from off camera all the way into the eyes.
Oh, yeah.
So, as a manufacturers, are we all in on 65 mil? Honestly, I probably shouldn't. I mean, it's the question we have in our meetings, and I don't know yet. Is this something that we should let one or two people build and see if it peters out? You don't want.
I'll take a stab at this. I don't think. Well, judging the current state of where we are in the industry, it sucks right now. I mean, there's
that.
There's very little money, and there's not a lot of stuff filming right now. And I don't think pushing to that right now would be useful at all. I think it's just going to take a lot of money out of the system where it could be focused on just other improvements, more stylistic lenses or something that just, I don't know, seems better.
From the manufacturing standpoint, our goals as manufacturers, whether it was cameras or lenses, were pretty clear. Sensors got up in resolution. Sensors got better latitude. When you came out with the next version, it was technically a better version than the last version. Mm-hmm. On lenses, they weighed less. They were faster. They either didn't ramp or didn't breathe. And we made mechanically better lenses. Or you made lenses that were more flexible for different formats or for different shooting environments, and we all did that. 65 doesn't change any of that. It just gives you a bigger negative, a bigger sensor. So it's not as clear as to whether it's going to be adopted or not adopted. I clearly knew people were going to want full frame over Super 35 for a very long time. Cameras like the 5D Mark II came out with a big sensor, and everybody jumped through every hoop they had to just to get an image off of a still camera in a movie world. They jumped through ridiculous amounts of things that we made them do to make those things work, but they did it. Arri came out with a 35 millimeter sensor and sort of ignited Super 35 again with one camera, because everybody's sort of shifted to full frame. I still think manufacturers that are making sensors that are scalable is the brighter way to do it, but still there. Do we go now with maybe just a 65 millimeter sensor as camera people and make it scalable and just make one sensor size? That'd be kind of cool for us. I mean, it would make it bigger, heavier, all that kind of stuff. You got the amount of air fans and everything to cool off a sensor is different, and the mechanics of the camera become dramatically different, but it would make our lives easier. So who here is dying to shoot 65? Who here, if you were able to do an electronic 65 mil project, or somebody said you can shoot a film project on film, which one would you pick? Film. Yeah, I don't know. It's maybe nostalgia, but yeah, I get it. It's still there. And I'm also asking about sensors based on a physical size. I really want to talk about what's the grain structure of that sensor? What's the latitude of that sensor? What's the color science of that sensor? Just because it's bigger doesn't mean it's better. When Arri does something, the rest of us pay attention. And if maybe it's a thing where maybe the Arri camera is all the industry needs, and if that's the case, I can't justify building lenses for one camera. It becomes their own in-house thing. And Arri could pull that off. They're Arri. They're a whole Arri, Panavision. They can do whatever they want. We'll just follow them. Yeah, and Blackmagic is doing their thing too with the 17K sensor and stuff. So maybe it catches on, but I don't think any lens manufacturer is ahead of the curve on that. Everybody's kind of like, let's see what happens. So, but I still don't have an answer to my original question. Is I don't really know why. I don't know if we learned anything from this. Definitely not definitive. I'm not writing a report when I get home saying I found our future, but the discussion has to be had. We all have to know where it's going to. You're going to need to take us there. You guys are the ones that do it. That's why we're asking. So this was more a panel for us to get educated. So I appreciate you coming. So thank you all very much.